What if I told you that the number in your RRSP right now already puts you ahead of half the country, and you just don't know it yet? Most Canadians are walking around convinced they're behind. They think their coworker is crushing it. They think the neighbor with the shiny new SUV has a fat retirement account sitting quietly in the background. And here's the twist, in most cases, every single one of those assumptions is wrong. Welcome back to Canada Finance with Alex, the channel where we cut through the noise and give you the real numbers, not the sales pitch. I'm Alex, and today we're pulling back the curtain on what Canadians at 45, 55, and 65 actually have saved in their RRSPs, using real data from Statistics Canada, the Bank of Canada, and pension industry reports. No shame, no fear-mongering, just the honest picture of where you actually stand. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how you compare, and I promise, it's probably a lot less scary than you think. Before we dive into the numbers, there are two words you need to understand, because financial companies use them to trick you all the time: average and median. The average is what happens when you add up everyone's savings and divide by the total number of people. The problem is, if one millionaire walks into a room with 100 people who have nothing, the average suddenly looks impressive, even though almost nobody in that room is actually doing well. The median is different. It's the person standing right in the middle when you line everyone up from poorest to richest. That's the number that tells you what a normal, everyday Canadian actually has, and it's almost always the more honest one. Let's start at 45. Statistics Canada shows the average RRSP balance for someone in their mid-30s to mid-40s sits around $82,000. Sounds solid, right? But the median, the real middle-of-the-pack number, is closer to $30,000. That gap exists because a small group of high earners with generous employer matching pull the average way up. They are not your neighbor. They are the exception, not the rule. So if you're 45 and sitting around $30,000, you are exactly on pace with the rest of the country. Now to 55, where things get a little more real. The average balance climbs to somewhere between $180,000 and $216,000, but the median tells a very different story, sitting between $100,000 and $120,000. That means half of all 55-year-old Canadians have less than that saved. This is usually the age where people start panicking, because retirement stops feeling like a distant movie and starts feeling like the trailer that's actually playing. But here's the good news: this decade is also when Canadians tend to have the highest earning power, smaller mortgages, and older kids, which makes it the strongest catch-up window you'll ever get. Then there's 65, the big one, the actual retirement line. The average sits between $140,000 and $160,000, but the median drops to around $100,000. Combine that with CPP, which averages close to $900 a month, and OAS, sitting around $727 a month, and the typical Canadian retiree is looking at roughly $24,000 to $30,000 a year, plus hopefully a paid-off home. That's not a cruise ship retirement, but it's a real, livable one. Now here's where it gets interesting. A recent BMO survey revealed Canadians believe they need $1.7 million to retire comfortably, up from $1.54 million the year before. In Ontario, that number climbs close to $1.9 million. And yet, the actual median income most retirees live on is around $37,000 a year. That gap, between the number people fear and the number people are actually living on, is where most retirement anxiety in this country comes from. There's also a quiet shift happening, with 14% of Canadians now saying they don't plan to retire at all, choosing instead to work part-time or run a small business well into their 70s. So here's your takeaway. If you're 45 with $30,000, you're right on track, and the next 20 years are your biggest compounding window. If you're 55 with $100,000, you're typical, and this decade is your catch-up decade. And if you're 65 with around $100,000 to $150,000, you're not falling behind, you're simply living the retirement most Canadians actually live. The data doesn't punish anyone for starting late, it only punishes pretending the problem doesn't exist. If this video gave you a little more clarity and a little less panic, hit subscribe, because on Canada Finance with Alex, we break down the real numbers behind your money, every single week. I'm Alex, and I'll see you in the next one.